Welcome, everyone. You're tuning into Engaging Walk. My name is Drake.
And my name is Rubie.
We believe in the power of walking together and talking together.
It is a simple act to stay connected, and movement is key.
Hey, everyone. So, thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Drake, and this is Rubie over here with Engaging Walk. And so this week, we did our Engaging Walk again in El Cajon. It's a lot more exploring for us to do, and a lot more like unpacking, all that kind of stuff, and ranging furniture, all that stuff that comes with moving. So, still a lot more for us to do.
I would say that because we live literally in 3 towns, or county. Well, no, not county,
Yeah, it's like on
cities.
the border of 3 different cities: El Cajon, La Mesa,
and then
Santee.
Santee. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a little bit further east, northeast of like San Diego. It's a beautiful area, and like I said, we're still getting acclimated to the new environment. And Boba loves doing exploring with us, like finding new dog parks. She settled into one that she really likes, and yeah, so that's us right now. We're just loving this new neighborhood. And so without further ado, we are going to dive right into our content. So for the last couple of weeks, we have been discussing this idea, the notion of finding and navigating the one. And again, so those of you who might just be tuning in, what that's talking about, or what that's referring to, is this idea of finding the right person for you. And navigating how do you find this correct, a suitable person for you, a romantic partner. First episode, we talked a lot about investing in yourself in this series. So you bringing something to the table has a lot to do with finding the correct person and a suitable romantic partner for you. Second episode, we talked a lot about, when you want to help me out?
Well, we're talking about asking big questions.
Yes, there we go. Asking big questions. It was asking big questions and driving at a deeper understanding of who the person is, and not shying away from potential red flags, things that you might need to work on, areas of compatibility and incompatibility. And today's episode, we're going to really dive deep into this idea of seeking counsel and how that outside perspective is going to be essential for you to being able to get a certain point of view or another point of view that can help you see those blind spots, see areas in which you are not being able to see. Either you're not willing or able to see. And how that mentorship is not just essential in terms of navigating the one, but goes well beyond.
Yeah. So I think it's very important to have counsels around you. And do you want to elaborate more about a counsel, Drake?
Yeah, so when we're talking about counsel, what we're talking about is this idea of a mentor or a role model, someone that you look up to, someone that you value their advice, particularly somebody of the same sex, who can give you guidance and outside perspective and giving you a new look at things that you might not be seeing, and things that you need to see in terms of your compatibility with your partner or your romantic partner.
And I think for me, when I seek out mentors, I just totally agree with everything that you mentioned, but also like the person also not just like talk what they believe, but also like live out what they believe as well. Like you can see very clear all the evidence that they mention through their teaching, they believing, through their lives.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect. So if you're seeking to marry somebody, you might not want to seek advice from, a perpetual bachelor, as for men. You definitely want to seek advice from a married man who has gone through the ups and downs, has, similar experiences to the ones that you were trying to live out, and get that person's take, because, there's a certain perspective that that person has. It's almost like they're on top of a hill. They have a wider vantage point because they've gone and through those pitfalls. Just like if you had worked at a job for 6 years and there's a rookie, a new person that comes onto the job, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember what that was like when I was new and I was struggling with that. That's the whole idea of having a mentor. That mentor can walk you through and be like, hey, at this stage in your career, or at this stage in your marriage, or at this stage in your relationship, this is what you're going to be struggling with. This is most likely what you're going through right now, and this is how you get over that. But it takes this and this amount of work, and that's what you need to work on.
Yeah. But later on, I can share more how I, found my mentors here in the U.S. But just a real quick recap, mentions about them. Like there are three women that I loved and admire, and they're very like normal people, but they all have great marriages and they love their spouse and they have very healthy relationship with their spouse. Of course, there were ups and downs, but they. What I see is that I can feel the atmosphere of love, of peace, and respect to each other, and full of joy around them with their spouses, and that's what I want. Because when you look for the mentor, you look into their lives and like, how is their marriage? How they respond when difficulties happen, and how do they treat their spouse as well. That's really mattered when you pick a counsel for you.
Yeah, so for what Rubie's talking about here is she's saying that these three women that she went to them for advice when we were at a certain stage in our relationship, and she was trying to figure out like, hey, how do I pursue this? What's the next step? How do I know I'm making the right choice? And she went to these women for advice.
Yeah.
How did you know that you were at that stage that you needed outside advice and seeking counsel in order to get that outside perspective on our relationship?
I think when you know that, you are serious about the relationship. So once I knew that, okay, I think I can go far with this person. And so I seek out for all of them, say, hey, I have a person that I'm interested in. Can you help me to figure it out, this person? And so just like bringing the moms to the conversation, but they are not my moms, but they really like care for me. And I know them for years, not just like new. So they know who I am. And they know my characteristic and my personalities and all my stories. But also they kind of like have a heart as a mom for me as well. And they're all very godly women.
Yeah. Were you nervous bringing this to their attention? Like, how did you bring it up?
Of course. Because I was the one that, like not really interested and not interested, like never share that with them. So that is very personal sharing. I'll say, hey, but I share with them like, hey, I have a person and I would love you to meet the person, and would you be interested in? And thank God all of them say yes, of course, and thank you for bringing it up. And
so you were upfront with saying like, hey, I want you not just to meet them, but I also want you to meet this person and me, and give me your opinion about if I should pursue this relationship or not.
For sure, yes. So thank you for bringing it up. It's very important for us, for a person to invite someone in as a mentor, because no one's want to like jump into someone's business, unless they get invited. So if you are looking for someone to be your mentor, make sure that you invite them in. Like, hey, could you help me with this? I invite you into this, and I would love to hear your opinion, and I would love to hear your advice, and I'm sure they will say yes.
So what sort of feedback and observations did they provide for you after they met me, and how did you take that into consideration? I mean, obviously we moved forward because we're married, but how did you take all that into consideration in making a decision.
So, thank you again for a very good question. They, I mean, like, I have my own observations about you. And then, so I will introduce, well, first, number one, invite them into our spending time together instead of just two of us. I invite Drake to one of the women's house, which is the Garay. And so they both, see you in person. They both hung out with you. And then the other two, see you a little bit, because we went to church, we went to other activities. So they get to see Drake in person, and then after that, they can say, hey, would you like, have another time, just me and the woman, not like one on one. And then so they will bring up the questions, or they will bring up like, hey, well, again, I'm the one that
Right.
asking. So, what do you think about him? So they will share some questions that I already thought about him or observe, from him. But they also bring like, hey, have you considered this? And I seen this person. This is characteristic. This is what I observe. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? They will give you more questions on top of what you already have. And so that would give you broader perspective on that person and broader understanding what you want from that person.
Yeah. Okay. So you take all this into consideration. They gave you some new things to look at, and you were like, "Yeah, okay." So all these things that they brought to my attention, I feel like I have like a green light.
Yeah. For our case, yes, they said like he seems very nice, very kind, and he's great. So continue to get to know this person, continue to know him in this way. Of course, they will give me area like, okay, because we met each other through the social network, so it's a lot of time and effort to get to know the person.
Yeah.
So is of course we have area to work on, but I'm so grateful that they mentioned questions like, hey, consider how do you get to, so since you know this person, how do you consider to get him know deeper when you don't have a lot of time prior to this relationship? How do you continue to grow as a couple? On top of that, because he worked in the military, so he has underway and deployment, constantly. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and like Ruby was alluding to, I don't really have any family here, and the only people that I do have are at work, and so I didn't really have a lot of the counseling and the mentors that she has here, because she has, in San Diego, she has a lot more family network, and she has a lot more friends and people she goes to church with and all that. And I pretty much just have people from work, before I met her. So I didn't really have that ability to reach out to people and be like, hey, what do you think of this woman that I'm dating, and how do you think I should pursue this? And I think, in terms of like seeking advice from family and friends, that wasn't really something that I ever really took into account before. Not that I didn't seek it, or not that I wouldn't listen to it when it was provided for me, but I wouldn't really seek it unless someone would give me some advice or someone would provide me an observation. Now, usually it was always like, good observations and things that I would take into consideration for, like, oh, these are valuable things that an ideal partner should have. And that went into a lot of the decision making that I went into for with Ruby, because again, I didn't have anybody, so I'd always keep in mind, like in the past, of examples that I learned from other people and from like good advice, reading, looking at statistics, looking at like what makes a marriage work, and doing a lot of research on my own about that and taking more time to really consider all those factors was something that I used to make a good decision in moving forward with Rubie. One for me was an alignment of values, an alignment of faith, alignment in terms of how we think about family, how we think about taking care of parents, and then also just cultural and like even though we come from different, very, very different cultures, there's still a lot of cultural alignment in terms of like how we value family, how we value our parents, how we value manners, and then also how we think a lot about in raising children. So, and then one knowing that the person wants to have children, is another big one, and how you would raise them, and what sorts of things that you find valuable, and then sorts of things that you and each other both find that you would like to do in the future. Also, things that you would like to do in terms of like future plans, traveling, and timelines in terms of like where you want to live. All those things, luckily Rubie and I were a really good match in all those things. So all those like real world factors went into play for me. And I think when you're seeking counsel with somebody and you're seeking that role model, mentorship advice, yeah, they can definitely give you a lot of really great advice and things that you're looking for, that you can look forward to, and things that they can bring to your attention. But in terms of our relationship, not only did I not like really have that from my point of view, but a lot of those values definitely came into play and really helped us when we were making that foundation. But just the fact that Rubie had it definitely impacted our relationship in a positive way, because it wasn't just a one-way street. It was like she took that information and she took those perspectives and then she brought them into our relationship, not just for her, but for me as well.
Yeah. And one thing that I also appreciate from my mentors that they don't really give me the answer. They give me their journey, their learning journey with their spouse, and then they give me a freedom to pick it up or receive it, and they ask me a lot of questions so that I can reflect on my own thoughts instead of just blindly follow things. They said like, Rubie, what have you think about this? So I feel like a good mentors, they will give you not the answer, but the question so that you find the answer for yourself. And of course, beside giving questions, they pray alongside with me. And that is powerful, because I know they care enough to pray with me and pray along with me, and for not just for me, but for us. And it's just so much freedom and love that instead of fear, because I was like, "Are you sure?" I was like fearful, and it's okay to recognize that. But then I was realized that why am I so afraid of this relationship? Well, long story short, like most of the times when I in relationship, even if it gets started, God would like, no, this is not the one. So I'm ready for him, for anyone to say it. This is not the person. But somehow I didn't hear that. And I was like, am I hearing correctly? I need counsel, help,
Yeah.
big help. And then I need help. And then, but 3 of them, they did, because I talked to them separately. I didn't tell them like, I talked to this person, that person. No. 3 individual women said that, yeah, go ahead. We think it's a good match. Of course, these questions, I give it to you, Rubie, and then you get to work with Drake, and you continue to learn about him, continue to grow with him, and then you will find the answer, because we don't. So I think that's one of the good things that about having a counselor. Like they will ask questions that stir your thinking, your observation for the other person.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of value in taking that counsel into consideration because no two people are going to be 100% compatible. It's almost like if you are 100% compatible, then it's actually like a negative point, I think, because there should be some areas of difference between you and your partner because that is where the real growth happens, where there's certain things about yourself that you're going to have to adjust to be with your partner. And
Yeah.
likewise for your partner, that there's, in other words, if you're just like two perfect puzzle pieces that just are overlapping, well, then there's just, you only have that puzzle piece. Whereas if you have two that are very similar in certain aspects but different in others, well, certain strengths that I have could be my spouse's weakness. And that's okay because I will cover those areas. And then areas that I'm weak in, she is strong. And those are other things that you want to look for is like, hey, is this person going to push me? Is this person going to bring out the best in me and bring out more discipline and a new approach and help me in those areas? So sometimes those areas of difference aren't going to be necessarily areas of incompatibility. It's just areas in which you have to highlight like, hey, you know what? This person's a lot more disciplined than you are. They have a more rigorous workout schedule. You don't, So keep that in mind. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it is something that you want to at least think about going forward. That, in other words, you're going to have to step your game up or you're going to have to meet this person at that level. And if you're up for the challenge, that's great. But if you're not, then, either work up to it or just kind of just know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And also, like, the mentors also show you the blind spots that you cannot see from the other partner and the red flags, Sometimes we fall into love too fast and we're trying to ignore all the red flags. I'm saying, it's okay. We can get it through. But guess what? If you cannot deal with that now, while you are still dating, it's going to be harder when you get into the marriage. So better listen to those things, red flags and the blind spots, because the more that you can work before the marriage is the less work you're going to work after the marriage.
Yeah, so there's definitely a balance there. You don't want to be like totally syncopated in everything where you're marrying and you're getting into a relationship with your mirror self. Or maybe you do, I don't know, but I think that doesn't really exist. And you don't want to meet and then, be totally incompatible and just make it work.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster. So you want to take that all these things into consideration and make your best informed decision. But at least when you have an outside perspective, you can get those different points of view that you might have missed. Especially like how Rubie was saying, where you might be actively avoiding addressing the red flags. You might be just not seeing it, or they might be so subtle that a person that is more experienced in life, more experienced in relationships is like, yeah, I know what that is. That's what this is. And it's not a problem now, but it will be later on. And this is how you address it. And this is how you should be approaching it. And that experience and that outside counsel, that perspective is going to be really, really important.
Mm-hmm. And beside they show you the blind spot or the red flags that you may missed, but they also showing you how to treasure the connection. Like I remember, when we go some of the down moments in the dating, and one of the women, she constantly say, Rubie, but I see what like I see and I what I've observed like Drake is really care for you. So if you think this way, I don't think it's really like the way that but trying to 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 project like hey, I care for you. So maybe these thoughts may be not relevant, but I encourage you to talk to him about this. What I can see that my mentor is not just showing me the truth, but at the same time, she point us to the connection. And that is one thing that I also want to transition into, like before marriage and then after marriage. So before marriage, Mike, all of the women that I mentioned, they really helped me to see through different layers and give me tons of questions so that I can reflect on and pray along with that. And through the journey of knowing Drake, I can see more clearly where we're heading to. But after the marriage, I remember I still seeking for advice with Drake, and all of them mentioned to me again is we're not sitting four of us together, but like individually, and they all mentioned that hey, after the marriage, you guys two in one. So before reaching out to me, the most important thing is that you guys comes together and make your own make a decisions for yourself. Because the most important thing is that you guys on the same page, you guys maintain a unity and peace in everything that you guys make in decisions in life. And that's the most important thing for the marriage. So, and then you have to be very clear with what you want together as a couple. And then, of course, you always can reach out to us and share. But before sharing with us, you two should have something, already in mind. So I think I appreciate that too. So after the marriage, the mentor is still there, but they not become a primary anymore. Drake is my primary. And of course, two of us, we're not just like making our own decisions. We also like come praying along with that, I mean, three of us, God, and two of us, we together make the decisions, and then we will again confirm that through the mentors around us.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Where they actually talked about this a lot during our marriage retreat, where we went through a lot of. We went on a marriage retreat. I think when was it? It was after I think it was in November. It was about a year ago.
Yep.
Where I think pretty sure it was November where we went on a marriage retreat that the Navy had sponsored for us, and it was awesome. It was more secular, but it did encompass a lot of the more religious backgrounds because it was run by like the Navy's like chaplain corps. And so they made it accessible for secular and agnostic people, but a lot of the information that they provided was really solid, and a lot of it was surrounding this idea of highlighting incompatibilities. But they they were coming at it from the perspective of like, hey, you know what? Those areas of incompatibilities, it's too late. You're already married.
Yeah.
So before, when you're dating, it would have been a great idea to get to know that information and to be upfront about it and to learn it and make an informed decision about it, which is pretty much what this whole episode is about. But once you're married, those areas of conflict or those areas of disagreement, you're going to have to figure out a way through them and establish connection and to maintain that peace in your relationship as much as you can. And then you can prioritize those areas of disagreement once you're married because you're at that point of no return. But you can prioritize them in terms of like, hey, these are things that, irk me about the other person, but that's just part of their personality and I'm just going to learn to live with it and love them. It's not really that big of a deal, to all the way up to like, hey, this is a really big problem and we need to constantly try to come to a solution so that we have peace in our relationship, and sorting through all those issues. And yeah, again, you want to work through those as well as you can when it's like how Ruby was saying, with just the two of you, and then come to some sort of agreement. And if the agreement is we need help, or we need like an outside perspective to give us a new way forward that maybe we're not seeing, because again, experience.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, I've seen that problem. Have you guys considered this? You know, because when you're giving advice, and I know like lately I've been giving advice to married couples, but more like one on one, not with the couple sitting there, but with like the man asking me like, hey, this is what's going on in my marriage. What do you think I should do? Or like, what's your perspective on it? And there is certainly a temptation to just, hey, man, I agree with you. You're doing 100% of the things right, and your spouse is doing 100% of the things wrong. But anyone that's been in a relationship knows, for a good amount of time, that that's not reality. That there's always something wrong with somebody, because we're human. We all make mistakes. So finding that area of being like, hey, my friend, yes, those things that your partner was doing, or that your partner said, I can see how that hurts you, but the goal is still connection. You're married, so what sort of ways do you think that you can find a way forward? Have you tried writing to each other if you're having too much of a hard time communicating verbally in person? Oh, you tried writing to each other. Okay. Have you tried going away together for like a weekend and really hashing things out and writing out your a way forward, or like identifying what the number one problem is to work on, and work on problem number one, problem number two. Oh, you haven't tried that? That sounds like a good idea. Go with it. Or no, you don't like any of those ideas? Well, at least you know what you don't want to do. So there's a lot of advice. There's a lot of great people that you can go to that can bring perspectives when you're on the dating side and when you're on the marriage side.
I think you brought up really like great points that before marriage you have freedom to choose, but after the marriage you have a commitment to stay connected, and freedom is no longer an option. And I think because so many people that they already in commitment stage and they still think, oh, I still have an option. No, you don't. You have an option to stay connected, to continue to love on that person, and to continue to work on that person. That is your option. And I think that, it's for aiming for the healthy relationship and marriage, I think that we need to change our mindset. Like, no, this person that I picked, that I chose, it will be my chosen person every single day. And it's not going to feel like it every single day, but this is my choice, and I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, it can be really scary to feel rejected or to feel disconnected from a person that you have such a deep connection with in marriage. But you have to get through it, and you have to find a way through it, because on the other side of what's causing the disconnection is deeper connection, more security, more safety, and more understanding between each other. It's I think about this a lot in music too. When you play with a band, where there's moments where the music doesn't sound exactly correct, and it can be a lot of work to iron out those two measures, those 3 seconds, those 4 seconds of where things are gray. They're not totally understood between everybody, and you can hear it. But on the other side of working through those 3 or 4 seconds is total syncopation and total alignment, and the music just sounds so much more beautiful when you work through those small problems that in one sense, you could just ignore it and be like, oh, it sounds good enough. Or you can take the approach of it's not exactly where it needs to be. But if we work on it, it will get there. It's just not going to be comfortable because clearly somebody or two or more people have a misunderstanding, So that's just true in life also, where when you have that dissonance, you have that disconnect, working through it on the other side is closer and closer to, perfection is not something that we can achieve, but we can keep getting closer and closer in music and in relationships and work, all the things that we do. I'm sure people can relate. There's always those tiny little areas of disconnect, but on the other side of them is a much more deep and profound understanding. So
Yes.
with that, we are going to dive into our assignment for this week.
Yep.
So this one's it takes a little bit of thinking, a little bit of reflection, but considering all these things that we've talked about today in terms of seeking out mentorship, having that outside perspective on relationships, I want you guys to think about a time in which, and I think this might be better given as an example. Let's say your dad or your mom was like, hey, this is Johnny, say you're a female, and such a boy, he always brought over pumpkin pie or apple pie whenever we had dinner. And that really says something about his character because, he doesn't come empty-handed. That shows selflessness. And juxtapose that to, Peter. Peter, this guy, he always shows up to the house empty-handed. He's always like digging his face inside the refrigerator. He's always looking for what he can get out of things, and that's just not a good look. We really don't like Peter. He might be treating you okay. Things might be pretty good, but that aspect of him is going to be of being selfish is going to rear its head later on in the relationship when you really count on him, and we just don't really like Peter. Well, your parents turned out to be right, and Peter was a jerk, and you should have gone with Johnny the whole time.
Uh-oh.
But you didn't listen. You ignored those red flags that other people were trying to bring to your attention. So think about that. Think about what happened, what sort of advice that you've received in the past. How did you receive it? And how would you like to receive advice in the future? And who would you like to receive and aim for this advice from? Whether it be a pastor, a coworker, your father, your mother, somebody with whom you have like a lot of respect and meets all those criterias of like, hey, this person has a relationship that I would like, a mirror of that type of relationship. So think about that. Reflect on advice that you have received in the past. How did you receive it? And how are you going to look to receive that advice and to seek it out in the future?
Yep. Well, we will leave you with the assignment, and that will be our Engage You Walk episode for Fighting the Counsel. And thank you again for spending time with us, tuning into our podcast. And again, if you find this helpful, please share with your friends, share with your neighbors, or whoever that you think that is going to be helpful for. And don't forget to subscribe and like our podcast. We thank you so much again for spending time with us, and thank you for all the views and support. We love you guys.
All right, yeah, with that, I am Drake.
And my name is Rubie.
And we are
Signing out. Bye.